Okay, this quick video is to discuss the highlights of the Enlightenment and the First Great Awakening. You should be taking notes not only from what's written on the slides, but also listening to what I'm emphasizing and expanding upon. So you can pause this at any time to make your notes, to process what you're learning, and you can also repeat as much as you want. So you've already studied the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment is a time period in European history that's based on reason, using evidence and data to arrive at conclusions. They developed the scientific method, for example. The Enlightenment starts in the scientific realm, but then it will transfer into the philosophy and political realm. John Locke probably being the most important Enlightenment political thinker that you need to know. The other one that you need to know is Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes believed that people need a powerful monarchy to control the natural state of man, which is pretty nasty, brutish, and short. He writes that in Leviathan in 1651. The other guy that I already mentioned is John Locke. John Locke takes a more optimistic view on human nature, and he is the first one to come up with the idea of a social contract. That's the idea that the people and the government enter into an unwritten contract where the people have a right to rebel and overthrow a ruler or government if that ruler is abusive or fails to do their fundamental job, which is to maintain social order and protect the people. John Locke is also the first person to come up with the idea of natural law as life, liberty, and property, which will influence the Founding Fathers, but most significantly, Thomas Jefferson. So these philosophers challenged the status quo, especially the idea of divine right, having the being ordained by God to rule absolutely. They will be particularly popular with literate populations, people that can read and write, like colonial America. Moving on to the First Great Awakening. The First Great Awakening will start in the 1730s and 40s, and it's a period of religious revival, of increased religious fervor. And most historians consider it to be a shared American moment that creates a sense of, or the seeds of, what it means to be American. And if you think about it, shared moments are really important in creating bonds to unite various groups of people. And remember, we've studied the 13 colonies by now, so you know that the colonies are not only diverse in their exports and in their agriculture and all that stuff, but in who they are, who's living there, and the religious denominations. So most historians say that it increases a general sense of being unique or being American. The origins, or why do we see a development of the First Great Awakening? Why do we see this period of religious revival? Think back. What's going on in history, the bigger picture? We have an increasing secularism. We have this Enlightenment. We have the scientific method. We see a perceived decline of religious faith. People are not going to church as much. And the dominance by the established churches in America, particularly the domineering Puritan and Anglican churches. So we see individual ministers trying to renew people's religious faith, and the way they did that was by painting a picture of the perils of hell, of what's going to happen to you if you don't have and turn to find that light, to find God. What things attracted people to this movement? One, emphasizing that really deep personal relationship with God, and the fact that you can interpret the Bible directly as long as you can read and write. Why should I pay attention to a minister, an old Puritan minister who hasn't had a new thought in years, when I can read the Bible myself? It is heavily influenced by Calvinist ideology, which was also a Puritan idea, but it weakens the authority of the Anglican and Puritan Congregationalist churches, which a lot of people were extremely attracted to, because as you recall, those churches are not necessarily welcoming to free thinkers. And so what we're going to see is this fight between traditionalist Old Lights, those will be my established churches, and revivalist New Light churches. There are two important people that you do need to know, figures in the First Great Awakening. First one is Jonathan Edwards. He was a minister, and his most famous speech, in which you're going to read a little bit, is Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God in 1741. It apparently lasted 6 hours. So just imagine sitting down listening to the perils of hell for 6 hours. That might push you to accept God and have this religious revival. But also, supposedly to one account, he spoke in a very quiet, muted tone that was not dramatic, that didn't keep you entertained. It's his force of words that did so, that really paint this picture. So as you read your document, think about that fact. George Whitefield is the other person that you need to know. George Whitefield was actually born in England, and he's a very famous minister in England, and then he travels and does kind of a tour in the colonies. He attracted crowds up to 20,000 people. Some people consider him the first American celebrity. Impacts of the Great Awakening. What we see is a decline in membership of established churches, the Puritans and the Anglican churches. Others, like the Baptists and the Methodists, are going to gain followers. We also see an increase in universities being established, particularly by other religious denominations, Princeton and Brown, for example. Other impacts of the First Great Awakening include the First Great Awakening sanctifying the idea that America is different, that you living in the 13 colonies sets you aside, really emphasizing individual rights and your pursuit of that, but also that you're different from Great Britain. So it's going to sow a little bit of seeds. Also, it does lead to greater equality, or at least among white literate males. And lastly, it does empower some people who begin to question the authority of not only religious beliefs, but of government. So we see an increase to wrap it up, an increase in educational institutions who are, these people who graduate those institutions are ready to embrace new ideas circulated by the Age of Enlightenment. And religion during this time period is a serious business in America. Some historians see a religious rebellion through the First Great Awakening as a precursor or a foreshadowing of that political and military rebellion in the 1770s known as the American Revolution. Last piece, this is just a Venn diagram that compares the Great Awakening with the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is all about reason and rationalism. However, the Great Awakening plays on a deep emotional connection and God as the ultimate source of power. However, they both really do emphasize education, and they challenge the status quo, which is going to be very important. All right, guys, that wraps up what I have to review about the Enlightenment and the First Great Awakening. You can go back and play this all the time. Hope you have a good day.